kindergarten. So this week we were talking about how beavers were really, really good at building things. Do you remember what they build? They build a dam. That means that it blocks water and then it makes a beaver pond. And in that dam they also build, what do we call a beaver's home? A lodge. They build themselves a lodge. They use sticks and mud and they make it all stick together. They use their teeth to cut up those logs, those pieces of wood from the trees. Did you think of any other animals that were really good builders? We read a story about one yesterday. Do you remember? It was a robin. A robin's a really good builder. Just like the beaver, it also uses twigs, little pieces of wood from trees, and mud, and it builds a nest. Can you think of any other animals? I can think of a squirrel. I can think of a chipmunk. I can think of a mouse. Usually those animals build themselves a home. Other animals, like a bear, finds itself a home. Do you know what a bear lives in? Bears usually live in caves. They call that a bear's den. Kindergarten, let's check out our words that we learned this week, and then let's go read our story one last time. Kindergarten, the first word we learned about this week was beaver. Here's a picture of a beaver. We know it has long front teeth so it can chop up or cut up all that wood that it gets from the tree. We know that it's very furry and its fur has oil in it to help it be water resistant or waterproof because it goes in a lake or a pond or a stream and it swims. In kindergarten, it also has, I'll uncover it, it also has this long flat tail. Do you remember 3 things that it does with that tail? It helps it balance when it's on its back legs. It helps it put down all that mud when it builds its lodge. And it slaps the water to warn other beavers that a predator is near. Our next word that we learned this week, kindergarten, was a lodge. Here is a beaver's lodge. Remember, it builds its lodge on its dam. Do you remember how it gets into that lodge? It has to go under the water and then come up. Can you imagine if that's how you had to come into your bedroom every day? Not just walking through the door, but if you had to go under your house and then come up through a trap door in your bedroom's floor, that would be so crazy, but maybe a lot of fun. Kindergarten, the next word we talked about was paddle. Here is our picture of paddle right here. This beaver has one paw, one claw out of the water, and we use our hands and we paddle. That means that we scoop the water. We scoop the water. If you've ever taken swimming lessons, then you probably were told to scoop the water like you had spoons. All right, kindergarten, your next word this week was stream. Here's a stream. I love listening to streams because they are so calming and relaxing. Just to hear them bubble, just to hear a stream bubble is awesome, kindergarten. Remember, a stream isn't very wide, it's pretty narrow, and it's not very deep, it's shallow. There's not a lot of water in a stream, but it still leads somewhere. It might lead to a beaver pond. Kindergarten, your next word this week was river. A river is like a stream, except it's really wide and it's really deep. And do you remember one of the rivers we talked about? We talked about the Ohio River, and we also talked about the Colorado River, which is at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. Your last word this week, kindergarten, was a lake. A lake is kind of like a pond because it's just a big thing of water, but it's way bigger than a pond. So if we were to put these bodies of water in order from smallest to biggest, we might go from a pond to a lake to a sea to the ocean, kindergarten. So a lake is where you might also find beavers, and I know some of you like to hang out at the lake. And what did you say your favorite lake was? So kindergarten, this week we have been talking about the main idea of a story. The main idea is what it's all about. In our first story this week, Building Beavers, that story was just all about beavers building. They were building dams and lodges. I didn't have to tell you every little thing that happened in the story. I just told you what it was all about. If we talk about a story that we read weeks ago called Henry Hikes to Fitchburg, do you remember that story? That was all about two friends trying to see who could get to Fitchburg the fastest. Remember how his friend rode the train and how Henry hiked in the woods? The story is all about just two friends having a race. That's it. Kindergarten, yesterday we read the story Robin's Nest. We're going to read that story again, and we're going to take a closer look. See if we can use any clues in the story to figure out the main idea. Are you ready? Here we go. It was a cold, gray April day. Thomas stared at the puzzle he just put together. I'm bored, he thought. He looked out at the cloudy sky and the new damp leaves blowing in the wind. It looked too dreary to play outside. Then a flash of color in the sky caught his eye. Do you remember earlier when we were talking about why we need to check out the weather? Well, that's what Thomas did in our story. He was checking out the weather. He looked outside and he knew that he would have to play inside. It was a cold, dreary, maybe a little bit of a rainy day so far. Thomas ran to the window. He searched everywhere for that orange streak. There it was. A robin with dark orange feathers on his chest soared quickly through the sky and dove into the branches of a pine tree. Suddenly, it flew back into the yard and hopped around the corner toward the porch. It came back seconds later with something long in its beak. Is that string? Thomas wondered. Why do you think the robin has string in its beak? Maybe it thought it was a worm? Maybe it's going to try to eat it? I don't know. Let's keep going. Over and over, the robin picked up something. String, a stem of grass or twig, and it took it to some secret hiding spot in the pine tree. Every time it flew back out, the robin's beak was empty. Thomas watched until lunchtime. What could that robin be doing? Thomas wondered. Okay, so a big clue right now is that the robin takes something long and skinny, like a blade of grass or a twig or a piece of string, takes it into the tree, and then when it comes back out, it doesn't have it in its beak anymore. Kindergarten, I think we can figure out what this robin is up to. Thomas was so excited to see what that robin was up to that he could barely eat his lunch. And he thought this day was going to be boring. Oh, Thomas was so wrong. This was not a boring day at all. He found something to investigate. Thomas raced outside to the pine tree and looked quickly for some clue of what the robin was up to. And there it was, just beyond Thomas's reach. A tiny round nest tucked snugly into the space where two branches grew together. So, if you have a tree, you might have it come down like this, and you have two branches. And right in that little spot was a little round nest. Why would a robin be making a nest? Why might a robin make a nest? Well, robins live in trees, and a nest is its home. And also, robins lay eggs in their nests. Let's keep going. Thomas looked around for the robin, but it already saw him. The robin was perched on top of a bush, watching him. So Thomas is busy watching the robin, and the robin is busy watching Thomas. Thomas sat down quietly and stayed very still. Soon the robin got busy again. Back and forth, the robin flew all afternoon. Kindergarten, why do you think Thomas has to be so quiet around the robin? Doesn't want to scare him. He doesn't want to make a loud noise because then the robin will fly away and then the robin will wait to come back after Thomas has left. Thomas sat, never taking his eyes off of the robin building its nest. Once, the robin returned with a stick. The stick was longer than the robin, and the busy bird kept dropping it. The stick was so big that the robin couldn't get it between the branches. The robin tried and tried, but the stick kept getting stuck. The robin finally dropped the stick. The robin was finally like, this stick is not going to work. It's not going to fit in here. I better go find a different stick. From time to time, the robin flew to a little muddy puddle by the sidewalk. Thomas thought the bird was taking a drink. All that flying must make a little bird very thirsty. But as Thomas watched closely, he saw that the robin was scooping up mud. What do we know that animals use mud for? They use it as glue to stick things together, especially when they're building a home. It returned to its nest and poked clumps of mud around the twigs and string to glue them together. The mud made the nest stronger. Finally, the proud robin stood on the edge of the nest and sang a beautiful song. Tweet, 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 tweet. Can you sing a beautiful robin song? Tweet, 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 tweet. Soon another bird answered, tweet, 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 and flew to the nest from a nearby oak tree. Thomas knew that nests provide shelter for birds and that they lay eggs and raise their babies there. That means that soon a whole family will be living in Thomas's pine tree. How exciting. It's almost like Thomas is getting new neighbors. You know, I mean, like, there's a bird building a nest in that pine tree and then a whole family will be there pretty soon. That's really exciting. The two birds twittered sweet songs for a while. Can you make your sweet robin song again? Tweet, 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 tweet. They poked their beaks here and there, pushing twigs and grass in place. Then the first robin hopped out onto the branch and flew toward Thomas. Thomas stayed very still. What's happening? He wondered. The bird gently landed on the cap beside him. When they say cap, they mean like his winter hat, like it's a knitted winter hat. It tried to pull a string out of the cap, but none would come. When they say none would come, that just means a string is not coming out of that cap. Then, to Thomas's surprise, the robin took hold of the brim of the cap and flew off. Using all its strength, it made it up to the nest with the red stocking cap. Oh my goodness, that bird was trying to get just one little piece of string out. The bird took the whole hat, took the whole thing away. I don't know, would you be mad if a bird took your hat, or would you think it was funny? I gotta be honest, kindergarten, I would probably think it's funny. I would just go and knit myself a new hat, but I would think it was so funny if a bird took my whole hat. I'd be like, what in the world? Oh my. Thomas laughed. He must think it's funny too. The cap had kept him warm during the winter, and now it would keep the baby birds warm in the spring. So kindergarten, you had a job yesterday, and we're just gonna look over and see how you did on your job. Now remember, don't fix anything, okay? It's all right for you to talk about it with me or with your grown-up at home and see what you should fix, but I don't want you to fix anything right now because I just want to see how you did, okay? It's all right if you made a mistake. Miss Dollar will not be mad at you at all. I will not think anything about it. I'll just be like, oh, they made a mistake. And what do we say in kindergarten? We say, that's okay. We just say, that's okay. All right, kindergarten, so let's check it out. So I asked you to color the main idea of the story we just read about the robin. First thing you needed to do was put your first and last name at the top. Did you do that? All right, so I asked you to color the main idea of this whole story that we just read. Your options were, was the story all about a bird taking a drink of water? Was the story all about a bird building a nest? Or was it all about a boy watching a bird eat a worm? Okay, let's check out the first picture. The boy thought the bird was going to take a drink of water, but it wasn't out of a bird feeder like this, out of a bird bath. It was out of a puddle. So was this the picture we wanted to color? No. And this also wasn't what the story was all about. We weren't watching a bird taking a drink. So nope, not this one. Let's check out our middle picture. A bird building a nest. Now, we did hear a lot about that bird building a nest, so this one kind of sounds right. Let's check out our last picture just to make sure. So let's go down here to the bottom, and this one says that there's a boy watching a bird. Ooh, in our story, there was a boy. His name was Thomas, and he was watching a bird. But what was that bird busy doing? Was that bird busy eating a worm? Nothing in that story was about a bird eating a worm, so it can't be the bottom picture. It has to be the middle picture. That bird was busy building a nest. Thomas was watching it the whole time building its nest, so you should have colored the middle picture.